New York City, 3.2. Western New York, the positivity has gone up and down, but recently we have seen an increase, and it is concerning. Western New York, we've seen, again, on hospitalizations up and down, but we have seen an increase, and again, it's concerning. Our vaccination efforts are going very well. We are dependent on the supply from the federal government, but we have literally hundreds of vaccination distribution sites. We're spending millions of dollars on vaccinations and public education about vaccinations. As you know, it's now just a race between the rate of infection of COVID, the spread of COVID, and the number of vaccinations. That's what this is. There are two lines. One line is the rate of increase of COVID, possible variants of COVID. The second is how many vaccinations are we getting in arms. To Western New York, where the numbers are dramatically different than other parts of the state, I want to make it especially clear that it is the actions of a community that matter. Actions of an individual, actions of individuals, and then as a collective, actions of that community. It is a function of human behavior. It is that simple. As complicated as COVID is as simple as COVID is. It's a virus. And we know how the virus spreads. So it's a question of your behavior and your precautions. The more precautions you take, the fewer people get infected. The less precautions, the more. So we're at a point now where everyone knows the facts. We've communicated all the information that we can communicate. We've beseeched people to take it seriously. But it is now up to you. It's up to you as an individual, you as a family, you as a community. What is going to happen in Western New York over the next several months? We want to get back to life as normal. We want to get back to going to Buffalo Bills games and Sabre games and picnics and school as we knew it and socializing as we knew it. It's going to be a function of what we do between now and then. It is that simple. It's going to be a function of how many vaccinations we take. I do believe that there is a civic and community duty for individuals to take a vaccine. No one can be safe unless everyone is safe. And I do believe that no person really has the moral right to transmit COVID. You can say, I have a legal right. I don't have to get a vaccine. That's true. But ask yourself, do you have the moral right? Do you have the social right to infect other people? Some people are healthier than others, some people are younger than others, and they say, well, I don't have to take it. I understand that. But you could infect someone who winds up dying. Some people say, well, I don't want to be a scientific experiment. 12 million doses in the state of New York, 12 million. No one's asking you to go first. 12 million people have taken doses. We have international experience on Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson, which they paused, was one of the acts of hyper caution. 6 people out of 6 million people had a bad reaction. That's 1 in 1 million. You have a greater chance of getting infected by COVID and dying from COVID than even with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So those are the facts. And I would urge people to know the facts and to respond to the facts. Those who say, well, I look at numbers, I look at facts, I look at statistics, I look at logic, they all point in one direction. And this should be a decision that is made logically and intelligently and not politically or emotionally. There is a reason why Western New York is higher than the rest of the state. And that reason is communal behavior. We got the number down once because Western New York was at a high point once before. We got the number down once. We can get the number down again. We just have to choose to do it. With that, let's take some questions.
To ask a question, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your window. We'll take a brief moment to compile the Q&A roster. Governor, your first question comes from Jonathan Epstein of the Buffalo News. Jonathan, your line is now open. Please unmute your microphone.
Thank you. Governor, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Jonathan.
Okay. I wanted to ask about the, from earlier, a little more about the fund for the students. How big is that fund going to be, and what exactly is it going to provide for those students or those people who fit the low-income category? And do you expect pushback from companies on all the broadband issue?
2 things. One, the law says if you are a low-income family, and low-income family is defined in the law basically by eligibility to other programs that determine low income. If you are a low-income family, the company cannot charge you more than $15 per month. That is the law. Do I expect pushback from the companies? Yes. The companies are not happy with me, and they're not happy with the law. Why? Because they will make less profit. I understand that. But also, they have this is a franchise that they have in the state of New York. And I take a different posture against these big corporations than they're accustomed to. Utility companies, et cetera. They don't have a God-given right to be a provider in New York State. There are many utility companies that would do business in New York State. There are many telephone companies. There are many internet companies that would like to do business in New York State. What we're asking as a state and what we're demanding as a state is it has to be fair, and internet service is now an essential service. It is what the telephone was 50 years ago. You needed a telephone to call a doctor. You needed a telephone to call the police. Now you need a broadband service if you're going to be able to get an education, if you're going to be able to access information, if you're going to be able to access government services, talk to your family, socialize. So the law says for low-income families, as defined in the law, $15 per month, total fee, not and then taxes and then this surcharge and this surcharge. And yes, that will limit the profit of some of these big corporations, but trust me, they're not going to starve. There's a second provision that says for families that can't afford the $15, which is a relatively modest sum, but there'll be families that can't even afford the $15. For those families, there's a separate effort, Connected New York, which is to connect the students with remote learning, especially during this COVID period over the next year, where if you don't have broadband, you don't have remote learning, which means you're basically losing a school year. And that program will fund 50,000 students for 1 year who can't afford the $15 a month. So they can access remote learning until we get back to in-class learning. Next question, operator.
Governor, your next question comes from Karina Jerry of WUTR. Karina, your line is now open. Please unmute your microphone.
Hi, Governor. How are you?
How are you doing, Karina?
I'm good. I'm good.
Do you
So
have
I
your,
wanted to speak.
do you have your
No,
New York,
yes.
do you have your New York State Clean sanitizer?
I actually do.
Floral
Yes.
scent?
Yes, I do.
How remarkable was this product? Maybe I didn't invent Google, but I did invent New York State Clean hand sanitizer.
Yes, you did, Governor.
Put that in my
Congratulations.
eulogy. Go ahead.
So here in the Mohawk Valley in Marcy, Cree is near completion. And right now, Danfoss is the only occupant at Quad C. We hear of expansion from chip manufacturers in the Albany area, like Global Foundries. Do you expect that there will be more processing plants coming into the Marcy site? I know we haven't heard anything from Empire State Development in a while.
Yeah. I don't have a recent update for you, but in theory, we have Rob Mahika on the phone or Kelly Cummings on the phone. I would ask them if they have any recent update, or we can get you one after this call.
Thank you.
Governor, don't have a recent, this is Robert, don't have a recent update, but we'll get one from ESD after this.
Okay, we'll get one and we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Next question, operator.
Governor, your next question comes from Jane Shacko of WHAM. Jane, your line is now open. Please unmute your microphone.
Hi, good morning, Governor.
Hi, Jane.
I wanted to ask you about the curfew for restaurants. I know it's extended to midnight, but many still have an issue with that, especially with summer and more events happening. Can they expect it to be extended anytime soon?
The curfew's been extended to midnight for catering facilities to 1 a.m. Jane, they can expect a logical connection to the progress we make with COVID. There's no mystery to what we do here. You look at the COVID numbers and the trajectory of the COVID numbers, and then we adjust the famous gauge. We either open it when the numbers are going down, or we close it when the numbers are going up. If we continue to make progress, then we will continue to relax the regulations. I understand everybody wants to get back to normal. I get it. Nobody wants to get back to normal more than I do. But we're not back to normal, right? Look at the numbers in Western New York today. The numbers are down, but we're not back to normal. So when people say, well, we should live life as if we are back to normal, but we're not back to normal. We still have to vaccinate people. We still have people who are hesitant about getting the vaccine. We still see rising rates in some parts of the state. We see rising rates in some parts of the country. We see rising rates on some part of the globe. So you have a tension where people are saying, I want to be back to normal. I want the anxiety to stop. I want the fear to stop. I want the isolation to stop. I want the mask wearing to stop. I want things back the way they were. Yes, yes. I want the stress to stop. Yes. But we're not back to where we were. And if we act prematurely, we will make this situation worse and prolong it. That's where we are. Next question, operator.
Governor, your next question comes from Dave Evans of WABC. Dave, your line is now open. Please unmute your microphone.
Hey, Governor, can you hear me?
Dave Evans, how are you, friend?
Good to see you, Governor. Hey, I wanted to ask you, just a follow-up to the question that you just got about the bars and restaurants. I know it's going to be a little bit better here starting on Monday, but we still have the rules where you have to sit down, you can't walk around in a bar, they'll be closing at midnight. But then we see, for example, the casino in Queens open till 5 o'clock in the morning. Folks here need a break. What can they hope for?
Well, Dave, I hear you. We need a break. We all need a break. The question is, how do we get a break? We have loosened the restrictions dramatically, right? All across the board. The number of people in restaurants, the curfew in restaurants, arts are reopening, museums are reopening and increasing capacity. The city is reopening and things are getting back to normal. I understand what you're saying, Dave. People are saying, well, it's the summer, it's been the year from hell, and we want to be back to normal today. But Dave, we're not back to normal. That's the problem. And we still have a lurking risk. And if we don't act intelligently, that number will go up. And then you're going to have to tighten restrictions. So we are in the last quarter. We have to get people vaccinated. We have to maintain discipline on the restrictions. And let's crush COVID before a variant kicks in, before anything else happens. And that's how we get back to normal, by getting back to normal. And it would be irresponsible and reckless to say to a patient who wasn't fully recovered, go out and live a normal life. That would be irresponsible by a doctor. The doctor would say, you're not at 100%, don't push yourself, relax, stay home, don't expose yourself. And the patient of New York State is not back to 100%. We haven't beaten the virus yet. And that's why I keep saying, don't get cocky. New Yorkers understand what that means. But I also get the frustration. And I believe our calibration of the reduction in restrictions and the progress on COVID has been correct. I don't think we've been overly restrictive. I don't think we've been overly permissive. And that's the calibration that we weigh every day. Operator?
Governor, your next question comes from Ed Dranch of WKBW. Ed, your line is now open. Please unmute your microphone.
Governor, good afternoon to you, or good morning, rather. We heard you a couple of days ago address the vaccine issue at Highmark Stadium with the Buffalo Bills after you said that you think that the county executive may have overstepped his bounds. A spokesperson for the county said essentially that they can do what they want because it's on county property. So where do you stand at this point about getting Buffalo Bills fans back into Highmark Stadium?
Yeah, I don't want to get into this is not a legal question. Legally, whether it's county property or city property or private property, doesn't matter. The state has to approve the regulation, but that's neither here nor there. The question is, what should the intelligent regulation be when the season reopens? The county executive's suggestion is everybody should be vaccinated, and then we can have 100%. That is a theoretical possibility. Hopefully, that is not only a possibility, but a probability. If people still take the vaccine, if there's not a variant of interest, if the infection rate, which is now going up, stops going up and becomes under control. But my basic point is, I'm not going to try to guess what's going to happen months from now and what should the best policy be months from now. We'll find out the facts at that time, and we'll make a determination on the facts. But months are a lifetime here. A few months ago, Western New York, the infection rate was way down. A few months before that, it was way up. So it was up, down, it's up again. What's it going to be in a few months? It depends on what we do in Western New York. And you make a decision with the facts when you have them. But it's not a legal question. I have a good relationship with the county executive. We both want to do the same thing. We're working together on the vaccinations, et cetera. I think his recommendation is plausible. I said it's just, my position is premature to try to determine what's a smart policy in a few months because you don't know the facts.
Can I just follow up, if I may? We have been used essentially as Buffalo as an example for the rest of the state in getting back to bigger events in terms of the testing before the Bills playoffs games at home. So could that be a possibility that we see before the start of next season, you know, these mass testing clinics so that we can prove that we're COVID negative, if not for a vaccine?
Yeah, that's going to be that would be one of the discussion points, right? If you said, well, I had to be vaccinated, I would say, well, I don't want to be vaccinated, but I will take a test before I walk in, and if I'm negative, why can't I go to the game, right? That would be one of the discussion points when we get to that decision. So all I'm saying is I understand the point. I understand the suggestion. I'm not rejecting the suggestion. It's a theoretical possibility. There are other possibilities, what we did before with testing. There's a combination of vaccination and testing that we're doing right now for events. You can either have been vaccinated or test a rapid test within a certain period of time or a PCR test within a certain period of time. So there are a variety of models that can be deployed once we know the facts. Let's take one more, please, operator.
Governor, your next question comes from Marcia Kramer of CBS. Your line is now open. Please unmute your microphone.
Marcia Kramer, do you have your New York State clean hand sanitizer?
I do not, but I have a whole bunch of other sanitizers.
Oh, but this is better. This is
In what way, Governor?
This.
Why is your invention better than the other hand sanitizers?
Because my hand sanitizer has two advantages, well, really three advantages. Number one, my hand sanitizer has a higher percentage of alcohol than most other hand sanitizers. And the key ingredient for the effectiveness of the hand sanitizer is the percentage of alcohol. Second, my hand sanitizer has a special scent that also clears the sinus passages. So you're not only sanitizing your hands, you're also clearing your sinus passages at the same time. Third, mine is free, which is also better.
Governor, I actually have two questions for you. The first one is pretty simple. I just wondered how many people will be able to get this $15 internet? And my second question has to do with gun violence. In New York City, it seems to continue unabated, and I know you've asked for police reform plans from New York City, which I don't think includes a plan for dealing with gun violence. I wonder if you would accept their reform plan, even though it doesn't have a plan for dealing with gun violence, and what should you do to stop the killing?
Yeah. Marcia, a very good question. First, on the $15, it applies to all low-income families. There is no cap. All low-income families, as defined by the law, can only be charged $15. It's a first in the nation, and it is statewide, and it is massive in its benefit. Any family that is a low-income family must be offered a $15 high-speed internet package, total expense. Second, when you look at these attacks across the nation, which are terrible, I want to applaud New Yorkers, Marcia, because you remember this. We passed the SAFE Act in New York, and it was hard, and it was controversial. We banned assault weapons, and it was the best gun control law in the United States of America. We took a lot of heat for doing that. Some legislators, I believe, lost their seat for doing that. I still have continued political opposition because of it. I don't know how anybody can now look around this nation and everything that has happened over the past few years and not say we were so right to pass the SAFE Act. Ban assault weapons, limit purchasing requirements, et cetera. That was really, I think, a piece of legislation that was visionary. And I believe that it saved lives here in the state of New York. Third point, crime rate in New York City, you are right. It is a major problem. I'm going to speak more to it next week, by the way. So I don't want to say too much today, but we did something in this state that no other state did. We have the most aggressive reform plan in the United States. And what we did was we said every locality that has a police department, 497 or so in the state, had to pass a collaborative police reform plan by the city council, or they wouldn't get any money, or they'd get a monitor. 400, I'll give the full report next week, but the vast majority have done it. New York City passed the reform plan. The council passed the reform plan. So that's a first step. But the question for New York City is it enough? And is the reform plan enough? And that's what we'll speak to next week. Because if you want all this reimagine, rebuild, renew, bring the economy back, Dave's question about open bars, open restaurants, open museums, you're not going to see New York City come back until people believe New York City is safe. You are not going to see the New York City economy rebound until people believe the New York City area is safe. And the gun crimes and the increase in crime is frightening people. I hear about it all the time. And the question is that police reform plan enough? And that's a discussion we'll turn to next week. I'm going to see you next week. I'm going to bring you the purse-size New York State clean, pocket-size, purse-size, briefcase-size, because I want you to have this. Have a good weekend in the meantime, everyone.